Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and an ongoing study in existentialism in the novel by Reine entitled She Died, Then Showed Me. We're going to take a look at two chapters this time. We're going to look at 19 and 20 together, and we've got a lot to cover. Let's go to block 1 and get started. Margot and the secular world of conflicting selves. Peyton must move forward through secular conflict. Peyton contemplates her paintings, trying to discern which ones to send to Garant for the art show. So she sits there reflecting on her story. At the same time, the need to move forward in her life. Margot and her extreme secularism arrives in Mendocino. Margot in an extremely revealing bikini, and Peyton join Coda on the beach, where he is sculpting something with the sand. After swimming, Margot asks Coda to go clubbing with her. Peyton pauses at the fireplace after returning from the beach and contemplates the last start which hangs above the fireplace. She then receives a text from Mark saying that the last start will be excluded from the lawsuit. She will retain possession of the painting, The Last Start. Peyton says a prayer of thankfulness for that blessing. Okay. Boundaries and warnings. Margot leaves the house in one of Peyton's black dresses that she took without even asking. Abandoning Coda, Peyton then warns Coda that Margot is ill. She's a siren. She is bipolar. And she tells Coda she's going to end up hurting you, and that you should not, and he tells him to not get involved with her. Difficult to do with a young man with raging hormones, but anyway, she gives the advice, don't get involved with Margot. Sunrise. Peyton is determined to be faithful to her own last start, and she has coffee while overlooking the sunrise from the edge of the cliff. As the sun rises up over the trees, she calls Adler to check on the fishing trip with the boys. She then takes a short trip to the French bakery down the street to get some fresh bread for breakfast. Then Lexi shows up to retrieve her daughter. And, of course, the expected argument erupts. Peyton sends Margot and Coda upstairs, where she can confront Lexi alone. She tells her that Margot is bipolar. She needs psychological help. Moving forward has become a battlefield for Peyton. Where can she next turn? And we're going to get into that turn here in the block 2, because when you turn away from the old self, you turn toward new possibilities. Repentance is a 180. You're turning from the old self toward new possibilities, and we'll take a look at that in block 2. But she finds out that she's been called to a battlefield. This journey, I love what Billy Graham said years ago in one of his evangelism conferences. He said, we've been called to a battlefield, not to a playground. We've been called to a battlefield, a spiritual battle. Let's move on to block 2 and take a look at this turn toward, the necessary turn toward spirit in the Utah parks and monuments. I'll pause here just for a second because I want to talk about Utah. I love this as being a part of the novel because even though Yosemite is my favorite national park, I have been to Mount Zion National Park. I have been to Bryce Canyon in Utah, and Utah is beautiful. I mean, you will confront the living Spirit of God in Utah. You will. It's amazing. Mount Zion is tremendously powerful. It's a spiritual. You feel the spiritual presence of God in Mount Zion National Park. In Bryce Canyon, it's a sanctuary for meditation and prayer. It's amazing. Bryce Canyon is truly amazing, and I loved both of those ventures to Mount Zion and to Bryce Canyon, and I have a great appreciation for the beauty and the majesty and the spiritual presence of God in the Utah landscape. All right, note 1, 2-1, offering help. In spite of the arguments and conflict, Peyton tells Margot that she can come to the ranch after Peyton does return there. Margot, disconnected, ditches Coda and goes out bar hopping again. Secular Margot. No turning back. By Monday, Peyton had selected and packed and shipped out 37 canvases to Garant. There's no turning back from that decision now. She's going to put her story on display for criticism and hopefully for a successful art show, but there's no turning back now. They've been selected, packed, and shipped out, 37 canvases in all. Departure, but with a lot of loose ends. Peyton and Coda seal up the house. Margot does return, and Peyton sits down with her for a last conversation before they leave. She explains the symptoms of what it means to be bipolar and tells Margot that, in her opinion, she should seek help from a good psychologist. Margot says, please apologize to Coda for me. In other words, she refuses to do it herself. She's going to ask Margot to apologize to Coda. Isolated and fractured, Peyton does arrive at Salt Lake City to do that restoration work. Then she calls Laylee from her hotel to ask that that she please send the boys out for an adventure exploring the parks and monuments of Utah. She wants the boys to have that experience. But to herself, Peyton feels isolated and fractured. And Peyton is in need of this communion with nature herself. She needs this. She's going to need this time alone with Spirit. When she picks up the boys at the airport, surprisingly, she finds that Adler has traveled with the two boys. It's a pleasant surprise, but she didn't expect Adler to show up also, golden in the sunlight. Now maybe some of Coda's gaze and awe and wonder can become a part of Peyton's outlook. Adler and Peyton sit under the Mesa Arch together, taking in the transcendent magical view, and the many hoodoos stand by as guardians, sentinels, guarding their shared sacred moment. And it is a sacred moment, and I experienced many sacred moments in Mount Zion, and especially Bryce Canyon. I call Bryce Canyon the sanctuary. It's the most. It's one of the most holy and spiritual natural sites on Earth. I recommend Bryce Canyon strongly, but And I've got photographs of Bryce Canyon and a photograph of Mount Zion, both above the headboard in my bedroom. And both of those photographs were published internationally. But they're very, very serene, contemplative moments. I really loved Mount Zion. And so I do understand this statement that, yes, these hoodoos are guarding a sacred moment of contemplation. Peyton pulls out an orange and peels it, saying, "They say if you can peel an orange without breaking the skin, you'll go to heaven." Adler confesses, "To me, this is heaven." Peyton responds, "You know, your eyes really aren't dark. They're golden in this light." Their next stop will be the end of the Rim Trail, where it is said that one can make a wish in the palm of the gods. So this turning away from secularism in Block 1 has resulted now in a turn toward the Spirit in Block 2. Peyton has turned from secularism and now turns toward the Spirit. And she wants to share it with the boys. She wants to share it with Adler. She wants to share it, which is what we naturally want to do. When we are filled with the Spirit, when we are overwhelmingly filled with the Spirit, we naturally are inspired to share it. We want to share that experience. We want to share that truth. We want to share that discernment and awareness that we come by spiritually. It overflows, and it's very natural to want to enthusiastically share that experience. Peyton wanted the boys there. She wanted the boys. Remember, the boys had a very unique upbringing with their grandmother. They were brought up at the mission church, so they had the input from their grandmother and native Indian mysticism, which they heard every day from their grandmother, and also Catholic Christian teaching from Father Gabriel. So the two boys, especially the older one, Mikey, they've had spiritual input every day of their life. Native Indian mysticism coupled with Catholic theology. That's how they were raised. And now here they are in Utah, confronted by beautiful presence of Spirit in nature. And it will not be ignored by Mikey. It will not be ignored. His background, the way he's been raised, it's going to come to the forefront in Block 3. So we've looked at the turn from secularism in Block 1. We looked at the turn toward the Spirit in Block 2. And now in Block 3, we wrap up these two chapters with the climb to spiritual perception of what God desires for you. Adler tells Peyton, we must strive toward what God wishes for us. Peyton then tells Adler, you kind of sound like Father Gabriel there. Adler qualifies his speech with the following: I look for divine, unexpected possibilities that I normally would have not considered. And now we also have to look at, and of what demands participation. Adler adds, we earn our dreams with hard work. Peyton adds, that's spoken like a true cowboy with a true heart. Peyton also adds, sometimes the answers we seek, they come from very mysterious places. And of what demands interpretation. Peyton offers the following. I love this statement. Divine complexity is both beautiful and open to interpretation. I'll say that again. It's a beautiful line. Divine complexity is both beautiful and open to interpretation. But later, in their climb to the ancient village of Hovenweep. It's an old, ancient 800-year-old Indian Ute village. Mikey reaches the summit with Peyton. Now, Mikey's the 5th grader, okay? He's the 9-year-old or the 10-year-old. He reaches the summit with Peyton and reveals some amazing spiritual insight for such a young child. He says, divine power is stronger on the way up. I love that. Divine power is stronger on the journey up. It's during the journey. He also says that he sees Hanovi here. Remember, his grandmother called him Hanovi, the strong deer. And he says, I see Hanovi here, who once lived here in this village. What does that mean? Well, if he sees Hanovi, he is Hanovi, so obviously he sees his Ute Indian heritage. He sees his spiritual Ute identity. He has a self-awareness vision. And I don't discount that at all. It's very much believable, knowing the background that the two boys had with their grandmother, who taught them native Indian mysticism and then the mystical teachings from Catholic Christian teaching from Father Gabriel. They were raised in a spiritual environment. And trust me, a 5th grader will internalize a lot of that. 5th graders are smart. I don't doubt any of this. I see Mikey as very much having internalized all of this. But he sees his spirit self. He sees his Ute Indian heritage. He sees his grandmother called him Hanovi, strong deer. And he goes, I see strong deer here. And I've never seen him before, but now I see him. Now I do see him. And of what demands vision. Ricky, when they finally get up to the top, by the way, Adler had to carry Ricky piggyback, but when they got up there, Ricky says, Mikey has drawings of Hovenweep in his sketchbook that he has drawn before we even got here. Grandma said that Mikey has dreams with eyes open. Mikey's a spiritual young man. He's at a very young age, he already has a spiritual foundation to his life. He's very much has internalized what his grandmother taught him of the Ute Indian mysticism. It's a part of his life. As a 5th grader, at the age of 10, I mean, it's incredible. But I love this character that here's this young boy who's been raised by a spiritually centered grandmother and also by a Catholic priest, and the two of them have come together in what has been internalized in a very mature Mikey at a young age. He's a 5th grader, but he's already thinking spiritually. And he says, I saw strong deer here. He said, I've been told that I am strong deer by my grandmother, but I've never seen strong deer ever. I've never actually seen strong deer. This is the first time that has happened. And so he's excited. He's had this spiritual vision. So participation, interpretation, and vision all contribute to the following of what God intends for our lives. All of these characters, think of it this way in these 2 chapters. These characters are a mirror being held up to the life of Peyton for her to reflect on what she needs in her life. They are a mirror being held up to her life. And I love the mixture here of Ute Indian mysticism and Catholic theology. And I love the fact that Peyton is reaching out toward loving these 2 boys. I mean, they are alone. They've got no one. Their grandmother has died. She is not just meeting their physical needs, but look at this spiritual experience that they've gained on this trip to Utah. So bravo for her giving them this spiritual enrichment. Very powerful 2 chapters. That's going to wrap up 19 and 20. And next time we're going to go 2 chapters again. We're going to go 21 and 22, 241 to 264. So 2 chapters next time. That wraps up chapters 19 and 20. Very, very powerful.